Thanks for staying with us on SABC News. Over 400 million rand is said to have been spent in just 3 months by the Gauteng Department of Education on decontamination of schools, some of which has been deemed unnecessary. Steve Mabona from the department joins me. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Over 400 million rand spent in 3 months. What happened?
Yes, the MEC has already indicated that he's dismayed about the millions that have been spent on decontamination, deep cleaning, sanitization, in different schools in Gauteng. Well, he has indicated that after perusing the report, he's actually at an advanced stage of consulting the law enforcement agencies, the investigative bodies as well that can assist us to actually investigate on what might have transpired, so that we then will be in a position to can answer at a later stage on what transpired, why so much, what is it that was used for, and is there any justification, because we also want to know whether there is any value for money. That's why I said you would also ask the Auditor General to also assist in this process.
Yeah. Are there no checks and balances beforehand that look at the costs of things before they escalate, instead of being reactive and waiting for outside people to tell you that something is wrong with spending 400 million rand, which the Department of Health says is not necessary in some parts? Is there not something that happens beforehand to say, perhaps we as the Gauteng Department of Education are going wrong here?
Well, there are internal processes that you will go through when you procure. And, well, you also need to understand that we are very far from the process of procurement. Like MEC has already indicated that he actually was disappointed, was taken aback when going through the report and looking at the figures and looking at the number of companies and the amount of money that they would have received. So you then need to give other people an opportunity to assist you to understand, because you can't take it internal and say what transpired here. They will then give you a report. So if you want to verify and make sure that everything that is in the report is justifiable, there's a reason for some of the activities, there's justification, you will be then informed by other agencies that will be in a position to assist you. So that's why he felt that on the face of it, he's dismayed, he's taken aback when he was looking at the figures. So he then felt that he need, assistance from outside people.
Yeah. So then my understanding is, if you're saying that he's quite removed and you're quite removed from the procurement process and the like, is that it appears that maybe there isn't oversight or enough oversight, and it's only when things balloon over a certain amount that oversight happens.
Yes, but you will have an understanding that the oversight will then mean that you must know what is happening in the department, basing yourself on activities and reports that you get. But you'll understand that the politicians are not allowed to, participate in the procurement processes, because there are legislative requirements. There's legislation which guide you on how to procure. So in essence, politicians will not be in a position to make an input there, because there is a process that is far from them. But the accounting officer will then be responsible for such. That's why the PFMA will then be guiding you on how you procure, how you make sure that services are there in the department. As much as the oversight, you'll take the responsibility. The MEC has already indicated that he will then be informed by what transpired in terms of the reports, and make sure that take necessary action. And he's already committed that he will indeed take necessary action if there are people that must take responsibility or account on actions that have been taken, during the procurement of those activities, then that will then have to be the case.
Right. So, Mr. Mabona, as the department, companies got paid 11 million rand for 42 schools, decontaminating 42 schools, 55 million rand for 198 schools. Is this justifiable? And I'm also asking in the context of you speaking to other media houses before, the Daily Maverick, and saying at the time 98 million rand was justifiable. In an instance where we know there have been large-scale incidences and reports of corruption, in a time where there is not a lot of money going around and it's needed for social services and the like, and when the Department of Health says schools don't need to be defogged, is it justifiable that the department has spent this much money and that you as that department have let that happen?
No, but when you look at the report, you peruse it very clearly or thoroughly, you will have an indication that it did not mention only the decontamination. It also goes to deep cleaning, goes to sanitization of those schools. Because remember, there were pressures coming from educators, from unions, from learners, from SGBs to say, if there's a COVID-19 positive case in a school, there's no way that we're going to go there. The school must be decontaminated, must, all those processes must be done. So it's a continuous process which had to happen, but the justification thereof, that's where we have a problem to say, but is there any justification of the amounts? Hence, we need independent people who will go and say, this amount, yes, indeed, it's justified. This amount, not justified. If there's a necessity for us to recoup the money, then that process must follow through. But like as we are saying, there was a lot of pressure to make sure that, to allay fears, make sure that learners go to school, parents are, they are not afraid, SGB, educators as well, they are not afraid. So some of the activities you had to do, but justification thereof of the amounts, then the bodies that will then be required, to investigate, they'll then have to, assist us with that justification part.
Yeah, so my concern is that it seems that there needs to be external people rather, to advise you on certain issues that some people would say should be a standard already. So when it comes to the service providers who are working in these schools, some of them were people who are consultants, some of them were people who had nothing to do with cleansing chemicals. There appears to be no set criteria for who is allowed to charge these amounts of money to decontaminate the schools. And I know you've said about the report. I've read the report and I've got the report in front of me. Some of those service providers are not people who specialize in decontamination. It's almost like there's just a large pool of people and some of them were just roped in without the necessary qualifications and paid these large amounts.
Yes, that's why we need an investigative body that is going to assist us to look at all those elements. In the face of it, you might have an opinion, but only to find that there's another opinion that will be coming from people who know these things. So that's why from where we are sitting, we need that assistance, and we are hopeful that that intervention is going to assist us. It's not going to assist us to say, this company, this is what we think, by looking at what we see. But we need an expert body that is going to be assisting us, and then they will guide us on, say, on this one, officials might have erred, and this is what we need to do. On this one, probably you are correct. Yes, indeed. I mean, there are alarming amounts when you look at the report to say this is quite huge, but then they will tell you that there's the number of activities that that company would have done. Some they will say the availability and the those that would have been saying after a COVID-19 positive case that has been revealed, then you need to go there within 24 hours. You tell people that they need to go there. So the availability and the muscle to be in a position to do that work. So all those elements, those are the things that we need to understand on whether that was done and what is it that we were looking at.
Mr. Mabona, in light of the many stories and outrage and complaints around public funds, how they're used, how they're spent, and these kind of investigations, especially at a time where we need the money the most, do you think that there should be a cap on the amount of services and better checks and balances to ensure that money that's meant to save people's lives, saves children's lives in particular, learners and teachers in your area, should be capped, and there should be a discussion around that, because it appears from a situation like this that certain civil servants and certain business people don't have a sense of perhaps deciding that perhaps this amount is gratuitous or greedy, or during a pandemic we shouldn't be spending hundreds of millions of rands that is not necessary to spend.
You are correct. You are correct. That's why in the department there's what we call repurposing, reprioritize. There are other activities that you would not actually need this time, but then the issue of spending money, you cannot spend over and above what is expected. So that's why an expert advice, an expert intervention will then assist us to say, if we say this is unreasonable, what do we mean? And we should be in a position to say, yes, indeed, we were advised that this is unreasonable because of 1, 2, 3. We can't take now without conducting an investigation and say, yes, indeed, this is unreasonable. On the face of it, yes, you might be seeing that way, but we need an expert advice. That's why MEC said, look, I need then to have people that are going to be assisting me with this investigation so that I know any decision that we take, we're not going to be found wanting.
Mm-hmm. How much does it cost to build a school in Gauteng currently?
Come again?
How much does it cost to build a school in Gauteng currently?
School, well, it varies. Though is the Department of Infrastructure that builds, but we know that you will have a school that will cost probably 100, 120 million. Some it depends on the scope and how are you building that school. So it will vary from 100, 120, 140 million.
So if we were going to do that math that some people say is opportunistic, about 4 schools could have been built with this amount of money, because I know that Gauteng does have, I think, a 10-year backlog in terms of schools that need to be built.
Yes, we do have a backlog, and well, your opinion, one cannot dispute it when you look at the money that has been spent. So hence we felt that probably there's an overreach in terms of the spending. That's why we felt that there must be an investigation. So we cannot contend your argument that you would have built so many schools out of the amount that has been spent. But also, we also need to take in cognizance the pressures that were coming from parents to say, we're not going to take our children in an unsafe space. Teachers that would have said, we're not going to the school that is unsafe. Some organizations, our stakeholders that will say, make sure that safety is a priority. So cannot chastise on the other hand and say, this would have been done, this would not have been done, because now it suits us. We need to look at it in a broader perspective to say, was the activity required? Yes. Was it required? Yes. If it's yes, then was it the spending? Was it actually what was required or what was anticipated, or is it reasonable enough? Then that's where you will get an expect advice to say, no, this was not reasonable or this was unreasonable. But on the face of it, we see that it might not be reasonable. That's why we need an expert advice.
Steve Mabona from the Gauteng Department of Education, thanks so much for your time on SABC News and On Point this afternoon.